Codility brings you and your candidates the best hiring experience to separate the great from the good. That's why we're already working with some of the best engineering teams in the world. Codility. Remote tech hiring everywhere.
Hey everyone, my name is Tim Sackett, and I'm really excited today to present to you the imperfect evolution of the TA tech stack. Throughout this session, I welcome you to ask me any questions. I will do my best to answer those questions at the end of the session or respond during the chat while we're working. Basically, this is pre-recorded. So I'm going to be seeing this the same time you're seeing this, even though I'm the one actually that did it. So I guess I already saw it, right? Because I'm the one that's here. A little bit about me. So I said, hey, I'm Tim Sackett. That's my dog Scout. He's a mini Labradoodle for those who I know. Everyone always wants to know what the dog is. I actually got a new one, Tucker. He's actually a micro golden doodle. He's amazing. I need to update my picture. Who am I? I'm the CEO of HRUtech.com. That's a boutique staffing firm. So the nice thing about me as an analyst in talking about TA Tech is I actually have a lab, right? We do about 1,000 hires a year. I have about a dozen, well, probably about 15 recruiters right now. And so we get to try and use a lot of the stuff that I talk about and that I espouse. I also wrote a best-selling book around talent acquisition called The Talent Fix. I'm a blogger and I write every single day at timsackett.com. People go, wait a minute, every day? It's 5 days a week. And I started that kind of as a bet from one of my buddies, Chris Dunn, who's the global head of talent at Marriott. And he goes, hey, just for 1 year, try to write Monday through Friday, every single day. See if you can do it. Just a challenge. Sharpen the saw kind of thing. And that was about 11 years ago. I've been writing every day for the last 11 years. So I think he kind of tricked me into that. I'm a senior faculty member at the Josh Bersin Academy and love what we're doing over there to help develop HR and talent acquisition professionals on an ongoing basis. And quite frankly, I might be the biggest HR technology nerd that you ever will meet. So let's get on with this thing. If you suck at recruiting, a new recruiting technology will make you suck much faster. My buddy Steve Brown told me I should quote myself in every good presentation. That's what the best presenters do. And you will hear me talk about this statement and the truth about this statement more than anything, because here's what I know. I will constantly get a TA leader or a TA professional, someone reach out and say, hey, we need this new technology. Which one would you select? And they'll go A, B, and C, right? Give me 3 options. And then I ask the question, like, well, but why do you need this new technology? What do you have right now? And they'll say, oh, well, we have D. And I'm like, D's pretty good, right? Like, why are you selecting something new if you have something that is already decent? Like, I want to hear more about what's not working with this one, because, you're trying to, just go to another one that's just about the same. And what I find is they'll go, well, my team's only using half of that technology that we have now. And I'm like, oh, that's not a technology problem. That's a you problem, right? My technology that I use and my stack that I use with my own team, we have 100% adoption. And the way we get there is by ensuring the process that we have is solid. And then we, make sure that our recruiters are consistently following that process, right? We need to know that we can do this, that it's repeatable over and over again. So if you suck at recruiting, you get new technology, you're going to suck much faster. And that's the God honest truth. And you're trying to tell somebody that they just, no, the recruiting is going, or the technology is going to fix us. And I'm like, no, the technology won't fix you. The technology will allow you to be much faster, much more efficient, but only to the processes and measures that you already have in place that that work. And so we have to really think about that as we go into building our tech stack and investing in our tech stack, especially when we think about the evolution of where the tech stack is. Now, before we get started, I wanted to go through a little bit of some quick recruiting math of how we're here today and where we're at right now. We have historically low unemployment. 3.5%, depending on the jobs you're recruiting for. It could be a little bit less, could be a little bit more, same with the markets. But the reality is we haven't had unemployment like this for 50 years. We have less humans in the US today. Globally, in rich countries, it's the same story. We have less humans today than we had 3 years ago pre-pandemic, right? In terms of the working humans that we have to go out and hire. We had close to 9, 10 million seniors leave the workforce. We had 2 million women leave, only about 1 million return. Immigration is at an all-time low over the last probably 2 decades. And so all of these things, right, start to equal on. We have a major long-term recruiting issue nationally, and that we're going to face. And people go, wait a minute, there's a downturn, Tim. Have you been reading like all the layoffs that are happening? I do. I follow all of those. And when I take a look at that, I start to go, do we have a lot of layoffs? Or does it feel like a lot of layoffs compared to 2021 when almost nobody was laying off? Obviously, early in 2020, we had a gigantic layoff, and then bam, everything kind of came back all at once. But when we really take a look longitudinally and go out maybe a decade, maybe 2 decades, the amount of layoffs we have right now is actually kind of low on average on a monthly basis. What we know is that businesses run their business and they'll continue to have layoffs. A great example is when we take a look at the automotive industry, right? They're moving from a combustion engine automotive kind of build to an electric vehicle build. That takes many more software engineers, electrical engineers than the traditional mechanical engineers that they had. And so they might be laying off one part of their workforce and at the same time have literally thousands of openings that they're trying to hire for at the same time. So layoffs don't necessarily constitute that, oh my gosh, the economy is in garbage and we're having this hard time, right? And I say this because I'm talking about your tech stack today, and what we really have to really kind of understand is the recruiting math is super important, because when we go to our CFOs in October, November of this year and say, hey, we need money to buy some really cool stuff in recruiting technology for next year, we have to be able to share what the workforce, what the market's going to look like for us. And when we say, hey, we're going to continue to have a really difficult time hiring in 2023 and 2024 and 2025, then they go, oh, okay, now we understand. We understand why we need this investment and where it is. All right, so how did we get here, right? And here meaning talent acquisition in 2022. If you're like me, the last 2.5 years seem like almost some days like they didn't happen, even though they were miserable and they did happen. But it's a weird kind of thing, right? I keep going back to like late 2019, 2022, like it was only a few months ago or less than a year ago, because all of this stuff just kind of happened. And when we think about that from the recruiter experience side, early 2020 was like Black Monday every single day for recruiters, right? Recruiters were losing their jobs. Companies were cutting their talent acquisition departments and their budgets. And like it was just literally, like there was sites created, recruiters helping recruiters, trying to help immediately, right? The community came together to try, like, how can we help recruiters, and get them reemployed and blah, blah, blah. And then almost as fast as it went down, it came back. If you think early 2021 or 2022, this year, there was more recruiting jobs open on LinkedIn than there were software engineering jobs. Like the recruiters now have like massive power and they're sought after, and the salaries are going through the roof. And it's crazy to think like that it could happen that quickly. But again, that's the business that we're in. When we're not hiring, we don't really need a ton of talent acquisition. When we're hiring, and again, so I say when we're not hiring, and the pandemic was one where I don't think anybody knew what to expect. Is this going to last a month? Is this going to last 10 years? We're going to cut fast and cut, and just move, right? When I take a look at now, when we take a look at, even if we were to go into a minor recession, the demographics and what we're looking at and all those numbers I shared in the recruiting math is we have major hiring issues that we're going to face, right? So I don't foresee, right, that we're going to have this like gigantic kind of recruiter issue that we had in early 2020 anytime in the near future. In fact, what we really see now is talent acquisition leaders, CHROs and CEOs game planning to say, how do we ensure that we don't do a knee-jerk reaction if there's a market correction or if there's a small kind of recession and just go out and cut talent acquisition? Because they're like, wait a minute, we know how hard it was to turn it back on and get it back to where it is. And so that's one of the things, that we really have to think about. When we also think about how did we get here in 2020 in talent acquisition, we kind of have to talk about the modern recruiting history. And I'm going to give you like a quick, like, how fast can we go through like the history of recruiting in one slide. And so if you think about this, and I kind of got started right I think at the forefront of modern recruiting, somebody decided like, hey, walking in and filling out an application was no longer effective. Crazy. By the way, that's still not everybody. I talked with a talent acquisition leader that was still struggling with their manufacturing facilities and their hiring managers wanting people to actually walk in and fill out an application. So someone decided, hey, that's not good, right? What if we created career sites, right? Oh my gosh, and put jobs up there and people could go and just look at the job and then apply. And so we thought, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. And then job boards were like, you know what? You guys kind of suck at advertising and marketing. How about we help you, right? We'll post your jobs and we'll throw them up not only on our job board, but they'll also be in the local paper. That's how it first started, right? Career Builder was gigantic because they had all these relationships with newspapers. Monster, right, was early. Who remembers OCC, the Online Career Center? That was like the first job board that was kind of ever out there that was big from that standpoint. And then ATS has kind of jumped in. My first ATS was a green screen. Literally, it wasn't even an Access database. I don't even know what it was, but we had to go and like put all this information in. And then if you think search like on ATS is bad now, you have no idea. It was like a giant Rolodex of just people that you put in there and that you would never see again. But somehow, right, we continue to think that was better than having file cabinets full of resumes that we would never look at again either. The job aggregators came and said, hey, we can do this even better, right? We can do it better than the job boards. So remember when Indeed and Simply Hired were like neck and neck and punching it out, who was going to win? I think Indeed won. Simply Hired's still out there. Indeed, is one of those major traffic drivers for all of us. Simultaneously, right, LinkedIn came up and they decided like, hey, we should just put everybody into the database. And in fact, I remember, and this has to be 10 years ago when LinkedIn first really started to take off, maybe about 8 years ago, I had companies asking me to come and teach LinkedIn classes to their corporate talent, not talent acquisition people, their corporate like employees, to how to get them on LinkedIn. And then somebody started asking the question, well, why do you want your employees on LinkedIn? They're just going to get picked off by recruiters and blah, blah, blah. Obviously LinkedIn Recruiter got launched and it all kind of came to fruition. And now, LinkedIn is Facebook at work, right? Like it's pretty much the same thing as Facebook, except somehow we think it's professional. Okay. And then over the last, I would say 5 to 8 years, we had this massive wave of add-on technology. For sure, the last 5 to 6 years within the recruiting tech space alone, the amount of investment has been, historic in nature, in the billions of dollars a year. And so you have video and you have sourcing and you have text and you have chatbots and you have screening and you have all of these things. And then really over the last probably 36, 48 months, marketing came in and said, hey, hold my beer. We can actually help this. We can help you guys, right? Do all of this a lot better in terms of CRM and programmatic and all the automation that's out there. And so if you think about how fast modern recruiting has changed over the last decade or the last 2 decades, it's crazy, right? It's the amount of automation and change that we've had happen to us in the talent acquisition world definitely dwarfs our HR peers by a lot. And again, part of that is because I think what every CEO and C-suite have really figured out was talent acquisition is a competitive differentiator at every level, right? And so, yeah, we need great, employee experience and we need the payroll and all that and the benefits and all that good stuff, right? But talent acquisition is a differentiator to the organization in terms of how we attract talent and go after talent in a really robust way. And that's why, marketing, advertising, sales, and all of those influences have come into a really big way into the modern TA tech stack. So if we think about where like the current kind of TA tech stack reality is right now, for the most part, we already know and feel this, right? We feel it's chaos. And we'll talk about that a little bit. The average enterprise TA tech stack today has anywhere from 20 to 25 technologies that they rely on a daily basis. So think about, you have your core kind of ATS, and then you have, maybe your core CRM, and then you have your, all these other pieces, background, video, all the stuff that's listed right there. And the hard part about all of this too is that there's an overlap of the technology that's causing mass confusion, right? I'm like, oh, well, our ATS told us it does this, but it's like, well, does it really do that? Or is that just a feature they added so it makes you feel like it does that, but it's not really robust enough for what you really need? And there's a lot of that going on. And so again, that adds to the chaos as you start to buy pieces where we bought one piece for this and we bought another piece for that, and then both those pieces are telling you that they do the same thing and you don't need the other piece. And that causes a lot of that confusion that's in our stack right now. Mid-enterprise, 12 to 15 different technologies. And the overlap seems to be increasing, right? Which tells us within the TA stack market, we're going to see much more consolidation happening, right? We're going to see technologies continue to buy each other and then integrate and build so that we continue to kind of build. So it really makes it easier for you as the buyer to kind of understand what does this do versus what does this do, right? If we think about, hey, I had thing one and then I have thing two, remember the Dr. Seuss kind of books, they always cause chaos, right? And then somehow thing three came in and, everything, it's all this kinds of nutty kind of stuff that happens. The reality is we need thing one to do thing one's thing. We need thing two to do thing two thing. And we don't need them causing chaos with each other and us in our processes and what we're trying to do to become more efficient, right? We buy and we purchase and we adopt technology to help us become faster, more efficient, more effective in talent acquisition. And with all of this happening all at the same time, again, we have kind of this massive chaos that takes place. So where should we be, right? When we take a look at kind of the future of where that is and where that's going, for me, that is this one source of truth. And so the future of recruiting stack is really a simplicity. It's a quiet, kind of bordering on Zen-like, if I may. For the foreseeable future, we know that won't be the case, right? We're going to have clearly a system of record in TA. And then we're going to have what I would say would be a system of action, which is, again, think of all the marketing, advertising, outreach, pipelining, all of that stuff that we have to do. When I talk to best of breed ATSs, when I talk to HCM recruiting mods at the enterprise level, none of them are really building out great marketing automation because they know that that's just not a specialty that they want to have. And that, it takes too much time and effort and energy and money to do that, right? So we know we're going to have those two main parts of the stack. And then we think about the data that we have in talent acquisition. We might have more data in talent acquisition than any other function in the entire company. All of those inputs that are coming in, right? The crazy part for us, though, is that with that, it seems like, again, that we're kind of information rich, knowledge poor. We're not getting the insights that we should be getting. And again, that goes back to this kind of one source of truth. Like, how are we really getting out there and building what we should be building and making sure that we have all of those kind of inputs and insights that we need to make the great decisions that we have. At the same time, we need a system that's automatically going to be helping us kind of get out and get all of those, the top of funnel, kind of candidate flow that we need, the screen that we need, and all of that automation that kind of makes us more effective as talent acquisition leaders. So what does this even look like? Because I think that's the hard part, right? We say, wait a minute, if we've been automating, kind of forever in our stack, what's the different of what this might look like? And so close your eyes a minute and let me take you to a future of talent acquisition that's Zen-like. You post a job in the system, right? And we can do that in a number of ways, right? Maybe it's the hiring manager, maybe it's your recruiter, whatever that goes through that process, right? Position gets posted. Automation will come in and source, screen, assess, and schedule a candidate automatically for that recruiter. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute. Source, screen, assess, schedule. What do I do? We're going to get there. Hiring manager and recruiter is really the first step in the process then is to have a real conversation, a real connection with a candidate. And I think that's where all of this automation should be leading to, right? Is that it allows us to have a much more robust, deeper conversation with the talent that's out there. Nurturing automation will build across the process. And with what that again looks like, it's from first contact to start, meaning if somebody kind of comes and touches the process and they kind of go away, which happens all the time, the automation will go and pick that back up and help, right? We don't have to rely on a recruiter with an Excel spreadsheet to go and say, oh my gosh, I haven't heard from Tim in a while. I should probably send an email. Like, that's inefficient and ineffective. We need to be able to have automation as part of that. Automation will take on a lot of forms. To me, the best automation that we will have will be invisible, right? It'll be able to replicate behind the scenes all of those kind of tasky things that we do as recruiters. And then as a recruiter, you'll be left with the meat of what recruiting is. The real role of the recruiter in the future is getting that candidate to trust them with their career. Think about individual stresses in our life. Job change, getting married, buying a house, having kids. We work in one of the high stressor type occupations that there are in terms of adding stress to somebody's life. Every time we call and talk to somebody, we like to think about it differently. We like to think like, well, wait a minute, I could be offering somebody their dream job and the dream company they want to work for. You're right. But even then, you're asking them to leave maybe a job they're comfortable in, maybe peers and friends that they're comfortable with, maybe a commute that they're comfortable with. There's all kinds of these stressors that we add in, right? And so the best recruiters of the future will be able to build that trust with a candidate and say, let me trust you, right, with your career. Believe in me that I can actually do this for you. And then ultimately, the recruiters will be empowered to actually have and find great talent and have, instead not just administer the recruiting function right now. I had this conversation just this week with a TA leader, and he was like, "Oh, Tim, like our recruiters have 40 to 60 recs, and historically, I think that's doable for a recruiter." And I'm like, "Wow, they're not recruiting; they're administering a recruiting function in a process, and they're surviving on a daily basis." And again, I understand, right? Recs are different for every company and like the amount of work and everything that has to go in, but there's a workload that no longer is effective for you to go out and actually nurture, find, and get talent to trust you to want to come, with their career and come work for you. This immediacy of action then is not really showing back up. It's this move forward moment. It only happens through automation. Recruiters of the future are not technologists. The recruiters of today are technologists. We force technology on recruiters today, which is why so many recruiters, in my opinion, fail, is because they don't feel comfortable using the technology. And I think the automation of the future and what's being built today that's already in place allows our recruiters to be much more effective because the automation is invisible to them, right? It's doing the work behind the scenes. It's going out, it's finding candidates. It's the nurture campaign that continues to chase a candidate that you don't have to chase. And to me, that ends up turning into real capacity. And I will talk a lot about capacity and measures because I think one of the things that we fail at within our tech stack is really understanding how do we build the capacity measure? How do we go to our CEOs and our executives when they say, hey, by the way, in the fourth quarter, we need to up our hiring target by 500. And what I find is most TA teams will go, okay, we'll do it. We'll work harder. We'll be here 24/7. Working harder is not a talent acquisition strategy in the long term. It might be a short-term one, right? It might be a 30-day one. It might be a 60-day one. It is not a sustainable recruiting strategy. We have to figure out what our capacity is. What can we actually do in the talent acquisition function? How many hires can we make? Thus, when they come and say, hey, we need 500, we go, great, we can make that happen. And here's exactly what I need to make that happen. We only do that if we have the automation and stuff set up so that it allows us to kind of do that. And when I talk about that, the recruiting stack for me of the future solves our current data problem around this capacity. I always say we are data rich and information poor. We have tons and tons of data, but we don't have a really good way to bring that insight into action. And that becomes one of those issues that we face. A great example of this is that if we had the right data set up, the right data measure set up, and the insights engine that we need in our tech stack for talent acquisition, you should be able to solve every one of your diversity hiring issues. Now, people go, wait a minute, Tim, come on, like everyone's selling a diversity solution. But right now, what we can't do is go and pinpoint where the diversity is falling out in our current funnel, right? If you think about, let's just take a female diversity of gender hire. So we like, okay, let's just, for argument's sake, we start it on the top of the funnel, 50-50, 50 male, 50 female, bam, we get down. And all of a sudden we have a hiring manager that goes, oh, well, the hiring manager chose 75% male and only 25% female. So we already know what happened to him. That hiring manager is, misogynist or whatever, and we start putting these labels out there, and it causes a real negative reaction. Well, what if it wasn't the hiring manager? What if in the funnel we could actually see that, oh my gosh, in our screen, we have women that are falling out, right? So then we go, oh gosh, now we got to look in the mirror. Maybe that's TA, maybe that's our conversational AI, maybe that's an assessment that we're using pre-hire or whatever that might be. The data will allow us to really figure out where does this stuff fall out into the future. And that becomes one of the bigger things. That the recruiters of the future too, then within the stack, become better marketers, better advertisers. So if we think about, hey, what's your job? Well, it's to get somebody to trust you, but it's also to be thinking more like a marketer and working more like a marketer. And I say marketing and advertising, sometimes I kind of put those together. Let me give you a real quick story about what I mean. There was a real estate company that was trying to show the power of marketing, the power of advertising to a bunch of local realtors. And so what they did was go out and they think about like a subdivision, but this is a big sample. It's like 2,000 homes. They went to every single home, knocked on the door. Tell me, who's your number one recruiter? Who's your number one realtor in this market? And they did all of that. Got 2,000 pieces of data coming back. And it was like over 160 different ones that were saying, oh, this person's the number one realtor and this person, this one. No one really had, for sure, no one had a market share, right? A majority market share. And then they did an 8x8, which is basically they did 8 mailings over 8 weeks to the houses of these 2,000 people. They made a fictitious realtor, a fictitious realty company, but all they did in these mailings was talk about how this is the number one realtor in your marketplace, and they've sold more homes, and they've done this, and they've done this, and they've done this. 8 weeks later, they go back, and they measure, again, who's the number one realtor in your marketplace. This fictitious company in person never sold one home of the 2,000. 68% of people told them that's the number one realtor in our area. The power of marketing and advertising in talent acquisition is gigantic, and we're only scratching the surface of what we could do. And we always talk about, well, you can't lie to a candidate, right? No, I wouldn't ask you to, right? Just like every other company that markets and advertises to us, there's rules around lying to us as well as consumers, and yet somehow it works. Somehow I want that Hummer EV electric vehicle, or I want those shoes, or I want that whatever. We have to be able to be great advertisers and marketers to our candidates so that they will want to come and work for us. The future of recruiting is simply making more connections. And I've alluded to this, right? If we have the right tech stack and we have the right automation in place, at the end of the day, the future of recruiting is simply our ability to make more connections. It's our ability to get somebody to trust us with their career faster than somebody else is going to get them to trust them. Can we build a better relationship faster? And is our technology allowing us to do that? Is it giving us the capacity to be able to do that? Because when I talk to recruiters right now and we measure their daily output and what they're doing and what they're working on, they're spending a fraction of their day actually developing relationships and having real conversations with real candidates. They're spending a lot of day sourcing and a lot of day following up and a lot of day doing a lot of tactical things that are out there that we really have technology in place to do it. Should we be afraid of the robots? I think automation is our friend. No, wait a minute. Let's not call it a friend. I think automation is our partner. It's a partner because without it, we aren't as effective, right? A friend might do nothing for you besides make you feel good about yourself. I need automation to do more than that. I need a partner in automation to come, and I need my team to kind of really embrace that if I want to have this kind of rich recruiting life and I want to have balance in my recruiting life. I had somebody say to me just today, Tim, we all know recruiting is broken and technology isn't going to fix it. I don't agree with that. I think that we're lucky enough to work in a profession where it's ever evolving, and the technology that we use has been ever evolving as well. And at the end of the day, it's part of where we're at and the evolution that we have and how good we can make it. So in the end, I'm going to end it like we started it, which is if you suck at recruiting, great recruiting technology will allow you to suck much faster. But the other piece of that statement is if you're good at recruiting, Great recruiting technology will allow you to be world-class. You cannot be world-class at recruiting without a great technology stack along with you, because we don't have the ability to scale. We will never have the capacity to be able to be world-class without the technology that's there. So I want to thank everybody again for joining my session. I hope you enjoy the rest of the Talent Summit 2022. And I also want to thank Jem for allowing me to have this conversation with you guys. Again, connect with me. I'm out there, Tim Sackett, timsackett.com. I'm on all the social things. There's another Tim Sackett. He's a truck driver chaplain. I'm not that guy. It would be amazing if I was the same guy, but I'm not.